in my belief system, there's nothing in the world that cannot be altered.
True.
Unless death and, you know, your birth and your death. Only the two things you can't alter.
Okay.
So for example, if they know that a person is about to die, there are certain things they can do to reverse it until a proper time. And I even have a book later on, I'll give it to you. Okay. You can see about my own situation. These symbols didn't just start with the modern Africa. It started in ancient Kemet.
True.
Why did our ancestors have to deal with these symbols?
Well, I think it's important not only in the African traditions to have symbols, but it's also important in all the other traditions to have symbols also. Even the ones that claim it's forbidden to have symbols. When we look at the menorah, which is the 7-pronged candle holder in the Judaic tradition, that inspires sacred feelings for them. When you see, they draw pictures of the Torah scrolls, that inspires sacred feelings for them.
Right.
When we look at the cross and the dove for Christians, that inspires sacred feelings for them. When we look at the Arabic writing that they use, they'll stylize the African writing into images, and they'll draw the Kaaba on the actual prayer rug that they actually pray. So here you have 3 cultures that claim it's forbidden to have any images, using images to worship their creator. But when it comes to the African and, say, the Hindu tradition, we get no credit of having a higher understanding of the symbols that we use.
Right.
Even if you look at the book of Revelation, it's a book of symbols that needs to be interpreted. So we understand in our tradition that the symbol is a medium for a higher reality. The symbol is not the reality itself, it's just a symbol for the higher reality. The symbol could be used to access, it could be used as a tool to access that higher reality. Such as we see a bird, and that bird could represent God is watching over us at all times.
Right.
These things are reminders of accessing the higher reality at all times. We could watch a crane, or I see a picture of a crane over here, and the crane is beautiful in its stillness, and it could say it is beauty and stillness when you know who your creator is. When you sit still, that's a beautiful experience. You can see a picture of a drum that says and that relays make a joyous noise for your creator. And ultimately, the best example I could come up with off the cuff right now is the cell phone. When we speak on the cell phone, we're not considered speaking to the cell phone, we're speaking through the cell phone, and we're clear in our mind who we're speaking to at the time. So in that sense, symbol has always been and will always be used in spirituality, because symbol is the language of spirit.
Now, Christians have to follow the biblical law called the 10 Commandments. We have even seen movies about the 10 Commandments. In Kemetic tradition, what are our principles? What are the principles in Kemetic tradition?
They're called the 42 Tepra in Ma'at, the 42 oracles of Ma'at. And you had mentioned the Bible, like the 10 Commandments.
Right.
Even according to the Bible, I think it's in the book of Acts, it says Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptian. Moses was born and raised all his youth and half of his adult life in the Kemetic tradition. So he learned Meduneta. So when you talk about the 10 Commandments, he was already very familiar with the 10 Commandments. It's a condensation of the 42 Tepra in Ma'at.
Okay.
When we say Tepra in Ma'at, it's the oracles of righteousness. Some say it's what is the negative confessions. It's not a negative confession, it's a declaration of righteousness, declarations of truth. So, and it also could be 42 affirmations or prayers of righteousness. The text will say, I have not been a man of anger. In modern day times, we could say, I will not be a man of anger, because they found these texts in the tombs of people who transitioned in the next life. So the reference was, I have not, as in the past. So for the living, we say, I will not become a person of hot temper. If you want to use it as a prayer, it'd be, may I not be a person of hot temper. So now Ma'at is encapsulated in what we call the 7 virtues, 7 cardinal virtues. That's truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, order, and reciprocity. Okay. Now, according to all of the ancient texts, the Creator created the universal existence off of the principles of Ma'at. So Ma'at is our charge to be ma'atic, or balanced, righteous, and reciprocal in all our dealings and relationships, in worship, and anything in life in general. So that's our charge, to stand up and be a conscientious citizen of the universe and be a co-creator in the universe and keep order on earth as our Father did in heaven.
Now, in your book, The Art of Prayer, you explain how in the Anu Kemetic Naswt or tradition perform dua. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, in the book we emphasize there are 4 powerful times of a day that you can enhance your connection to your Creator or our Creator, or whatever concept of the Creator that you worship. Those powerful times, all times are powerful times, but these are peak power times in the day, and that's sunrise, noon, sunset, and midnight.
Okay.
And we chant invocatory prayers, ancient prayers, along with yogic-like postures to create a transformative experience that puts you in a more reverent state of mind, because the Creator is one with His creation. So doing these things at these times keeps you in conscious awareness that the Creator is, and it's always present. You don't have to invoke the Creator. The Creator is already there. You just have to be aware of it. So doing these 4 prayers is our way of dropping out of life and tuning in to real life.
Right. Now, when we read about historians trying to change the history of Africa, especially the monuments that we erected in Kemet, and the fact that there's evidence that these things were not done by Europeans. People like E.A. Wallace-Berg would say that the people who created the civilization in Kemet are extinct. My question is always this. Persians went to Kemet for knowledge, for wealth, and whatever. Persians are still living. They are not extinct. Greeks went to Africa, went to Kemet for knowledge, for wealth, and other things. The Greeks are still there. The Romans have gone to Africa, they are still there. Even the British and the French. How is it that only the indigenous people who developed this civilization had to be extinct?
No, they're not extinct. They're just out of their mind. As we went, remember we said the original transgression, you lose your sanity.
Right.
And remember, before I told you that, I said that the key back is going back to your tradition, which is Ma'at, which is being true, or is this truth, justice, righteousness, and harmonious balance. They've just become assimilated in other cultures. They didn't go anywhere. They're not off the planet. They're just assimilated in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, which now all of these traditions are claiming that their originators are African. So it's just a mislabeling of what actually is. Now we believe that, many of us believe that we're really Hebrews and the Hebrews did everything. And you speak to a Muslim, they'll say the first pharaohs were actually Muslim or Arabic or whatever, things like. So it's just a misaccreditation of culture and history.
So you talk about not being apologetic.
Yeah.
You know, the propaganda that was used in Africa turned a lot of minds in Africa. Most educated Africans are afraid of the word primitive. And because of that word, they would rather do things that are not their own and disregard their own. So for example, me going back to the village and sitting down with the elders for them to say a prayer, that has been considered primitive to some intellectuals in Africa. And this has actually created a problem in Africa because it doesn't help us to explain what our traditions are. So in other words, African traditionalism lacks explanatory power.
True.
Because normally the people who are supposed to be intellectual, they're the ones who can interpret something for clarity.
Okay.
Those people have run away. How do we bring them back?
By living, for those of us who do know the culture, by living unapologetically Kemetic or unapologetically African. It comes from maintaining the traditions now, in real time. And we have to make up our mind as, are we living a living tradition, or are we just comfortable referring historically to a once living tradition? That's the difference.
But how do we, for lack of a better word, how do we attack this propaganda? Because you see, why I'm saying this now is the thing that people visit me, we sit down, all these problems we're discussing, they know it. But on Sunday, they will put on their suit and they'll go to the very church, you know, with a white Jesus hanging there, and they know that it's not the right thing to do, and they still do it. How do we attack this propaganda that is in their heads?
I think that would be the responsibility of the elders. Why isn't there the village temple or the church right next to the churches and the mosques and stuff? Like, remember I said before, like, we have to get out of the living rooms and the back rooms. We have to stop being embarrassed about our traditions. Like, that's what we're doing with the Temple of Anu. We're up on street level with the rest of the churches, and people are like, oh, what are they doing over there wearing the white? And they hear our drums, and when the Christians come in, we don't put our drums away. We don't, oh, let's put the ankh up. Let's put the cross up so the Christians can feel comfortable. Like, no, we keep the ankh up. We wear our white, and we challenge them on every level of their expression. Like I said, they have their holy books. When you come to the temple, we're not apologetic about our Africanness. We don't use the Bible or the Quran, and none of those other texts are in the place. Because I see a lot of other scholars, instead of quoting the Kemetic text or the African text, they stay up in the Bible, because we like to claim that the Bible, the originators of the Bible are African, which they are, but there are other books that preceded the Bible. So quote from the books that you claim the Bible got everything from. Those books are still around. So it's our job and it's our responsibility to use those resources unapologetically. It's our job and our responsibility to maintain temples and education centers to teach what it is that we teach, and not be embarrassed and feel like we got to do it behind the scenes.
My goodness. You know, if there's a way now that the Temple of Anu, members of the Temple of Anu, could visit an African village. And I always refer to a village because of the fact that the village has not been polluted yet. Okay. If you go into cities, you're probably going to meet the wrong people, and you're not going to accomplish anything. And sit down and study the traditions, so that we can give it explanatory power. Would that help us?
Yes, it always helps, but I believe that's what we're, even without visiting yet, I believe that's what we're doing. If we were just speaking about that before we came in here, is like the African Americans' contribution is to explain the tradition. Okay. Because as you said, the elders and the people from the traditions themselves are not articulating, and so it's our job, because we know the language of the enemy.